All right, today I'm gonna head down to Advance Auto. That's all we got in this little small town I live in. See if they've got one of them temp sensor switches and a gauge we can put in the car. But we can't drive it today because even if they do, which I doubt they do, probably have to order that. But it come a thunderstorm today and it is flooded. The roads are wet and not gonna drive it in the rain. I guess I could take the tires, put street tires on it and drive it in the rain, but look, even the garage floor starts to flood. Carport. It usually floods worse over here. Yeah, look at that. That's a water puddle all the way up through there. It's usually worse when I don't have these boards in here. So I got these boards in here. It helps with it. So we'll take this temp sensor switch and this gauge and head down to the parts store. Y'all wish me luck. So I found this gauge at Advance. It's a Bosch. Goes up to 250. Starts at 100. Yeah, Christopher started at 160 and went to 280. But yeah, this will fit right in his gauge cluster, and it was only 30 bucks. The one that he had was 100 to 130 online. This will do water and oil. But yeah, that's that. And it's got all these fittings. That'll work. 30 bucks. Yeah. Now I just got to find a switch. Alright, so I ordered the switch off of Amazon. It's like 20 bucks. And it should be here tomorrow. And it should be nice tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get all that in there. And then we'll burp the coolant with the bottle thing. Hopefully this time it works. So hopefully it don't get too hot on us, because the fans will kick on this time. And this time we'll have a gauge to read it. But I'm going to go out and at least put the gauge in. So I took this bracket off. I just snaked the wire through there. Put it in there. Fits right in there. AFR gauge goes in right there, but I put that in my car for now because his sensor went out, and plus I was getting a dyno tune, blah blah blah. All right, so these are the ProMax 200cc heads. They use the 3/8 MPT tapered thread, so we need to put the 3/8 fitting. That nut'll come up here. Then we'll put the 3/8 on there. Alright, that's the 3/8 MPT fitting. That's got to go in the head first. Then the sensor will screw in here, and I'm just going to use some Teflon tape on the threads. Alright, Teflon taped all up. And in the hole it goes. I'm going to need some light. Like that, screw her in. And if you got the MPT fittings with the tapered thread, don't go crazy tightening those up, or you will crack the block. You will crack the head because it's tapered, so the more it goes in, the more it pushes out on the hole. And if you go too far, like if you used a half-inch drive and just went to town on it, more than likely you'd crack your head. But put some Teflon tape on this and send her through. And there we go, all done. I just ran the wire up around those valve cover bolts. And the good thing about it is the light bulb fit from the other one, and the bracket, the bolts, everything fit. So really, I just switched out the gauge and ran the pipe and stuck that in the hole. And that's done. Tomorrow we should get the temp sensor. It has to be a special sensor because, your regular temp sensors don't work the way that we want it to work. We need one that completes the circuit when the temperature hits a certain degree. Because we have the relay ran through that, and that's what grounds the relay out to turn the relay on, to turn the fans on. So I got one that was 185. The car gets up to 185, the fans turn on. When it cools down to about 170, the fans turned off. And the one that he had in it was a 180. I couldn't find a 180, but we'll get that tomorrow. We'll get that in there, and now we'll be able to monitor our temperature without using a grease. That's a grease water temperature thing from the dollar store, which that worked pretty good in a jam when I was trying to figure stuff out. And we'll get the sensor in there. That way, when it gets 180 degrees, it'll turn the fans on rather than overheating the car like it was doing when I was trying to burp the fluid, burp the air out of the coolant. Yeah, that's what I usually do. I mentioned it in one of the last videos, but I take a bottle, I guess right here, I put tape on it to where it'll just stick down in here and seal tight. And then I seal the overflow, because this usually doesn't seal the overflow part. And then I fill this up with water and make that the highest point. And I let it run, I squeeze the hoses, and eventually it gets all the air out, which this thing usually gets the air out of it by itself. It's not as bad as the LS cars or the LT1. The LS, it's got the thermostat down here, and when you fill the radiator up, see, like on this one, the thermostat's up here. You fill the radiator up, it fills it up. It usually does pretty good on these Gen 1 small block Chevys. But now on the LS1, the thermostat's down there. So you're better off filling an LS1 up through the top radiator hose, because when you fill up the radiator, it don't go up in there because the thermostat stops it. So definitely on LS1 or LS car, fill it up from the top radiator hose so it gets water in the engine block. And then in LT1, it has that on the water pump. And the LT1, it's reverse flow cooled. So what that means is, see, like on the small block Chevy and the LS1, the water goes into the block first, then it comes up to the heads, and then it comes out. Well, an LT1's different. It goes to the heads and then through the block and then back to the radiator. And I just found it easier, especially on LS, to fill it up from the top radiator hose first and then fill your radiator up. But this one, it usually don't matter. But I'm going to burp it like I do my LS car or the LT1s. I'm going to burp it the same way just to make sure we get it all out of there. I was trying to burp it, and I didn't know how hot the vehicle was getting because the gauge wasn't working. And I thought, well, if it gets too hot, the gauge, this sensor, I kicked the fan on. But then that sensor wasn't working. Then it got so hot, this other bottle I had made, it melted it. And it melted it and fell out. And I looked down in there, and the coolant was bubbling, and I shut it off. But I looked online, coolant bubbles at 230, 220 when there's no pressure on it. When it's in the radiator and it's all pressurized, blah, blah, it's got a higher boiling point. But I had the radiator cap off, so the boiling point should have been around 230. And 230 ain't gonna hurt nothing. Usually you don't hurt nothing until you get up to like 260, 280. You can hurt something at those temperatures. But I've had this car up to 300 and it didn't hurt anything. I know for sure it didn't. You definitely don't want to get them that hot. But I accidentally did. But anyway, I'm rambling. I got that whole Amazon thing, so that sensor will be here tomorrow. We'll stick that in there. We're not going to use the tape on it. Usually those that come with one bead of the sealant already on the sensor, and we're just going to screw it in like that, because that, the way we're using it, that sensor has to ground this wire out once it gets up to 180, 185 degrees. And that's what trips the relay to turn the fans on. So, anyway, more to come tomorrow when we get the sensor in. It's a cold one today. It snowed a little bit yesterday. It's still kind of cold. Let's warm up tomorrow. But shave my face. That's why you always see me itching my face. My facial hair gets too long. It itches me, man. Had to cut it off there. Kind of lazy though. I don't like to shave every day. But the sensor came in yesterday. Actually, it came in late yesterday, and this is it. And it looks identical to the one we took out, except for the one Chris took out, or the one Chris had in there said 180. This one says 175, which means it kicks on at 185 and shuts off at 175. Now, usually they'll have a bead, a sealant around the threads here. But there ain't none on this, and we got to put a little bit on it so it don't leak, but not so much that it can't ground itself out, because the way this switch works is when it hits that 185 degrees, it grounds this out through this part here, and which will go through the head, which will, you know, eventually ground out. It's got solid motor mounts, but we got this thing grounded everywhere, from the fender to the back of the head to the front of the block to the frame, from this fender to the frame, and then the battery goes to the frame itself, and then the Nitrous Mini's grounded down there. Plus I got one ran there to the frame, or to the firewall. And we got grounds running everywhere. We were trying to figure out why the Nitrous Mini didn't want to pulsate correct, but that was something else I touched on another day. But this time I'm going to put a little bit of sealant on it. I'm not going to put as much as on it as I put on it last time. I think maybe I put too much on it last time, and if it doesn't get a good ground, it'll create heat. Maybe that's what burned it up. But when I ohmed it out, when it was screwed into the head, I ohmed from here to the back of the head, and it ohmed out completely to 0. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm gonna put a little sealant in there, put it on there, and we'll fill the radiator up. All right, and that's what I got. It's down in the grooves, but it ain't on the top of the grooves. So hopefully the top of the threads that ground it, and then what's down in the grooves is seal it. That's what we're gonna go with. We're gonna screw it in. And there we go. In the hole. And all plugged in. Didn't really screw it in that far. Alright, it's filled up with antifreeze. I got the coolant in it. I'm not going to fill it all the way up just yet, because I want to be able to look in there and make sure that it's flowing. And I don't see any leaks, so that's a good thing. Check over here, make sure where we put the gauge in, we ain't got no leaks. Everything looks good so far. We'll need to check that as we go, and then I'm gonna start it up and warm it up, make sure it's flowing, make sure the gauge is going to read right, and then we'll I got that. Well, actually, I'm gonna set this thermostat down in there, because I just want to know the difference between that and what the gauge is going to read. The difference between what's in the radiator and the motor, just for future references when I ever need to use this again. And then once I see good flow and the gauge is working, we'll put that down in there, and then we'll fill that up with water, squeeze the hoses, and burp it out. That's the game plan. All right, it's about 32 degrees out. Let's see how it starts today. It starts good, but it won't stay running by itself until it gets warmed up, and that's just some carburetor adjustments I need to make. Back it up. The thermostat ain't open yet. Thermostat opens at 170. Yeah, that ain't gonna be a problem. That'll be all right. And then see, look, the fan's on, goes down. It goes down over here. These are both reading the same. That surprises me. That's it, man. That'll work. So that's where it stays, 160, because it kicks the fans on. And even without the thermostat open, it still flows. So, I mean, if you're just idling here, which a car overheat idling faster than well anything. Driving down the road, you got some air going through the radiator, but it took it forever to warm up, so I'm pretty confident. I only let it get up to like 230, 240 before. That's fine. When the fans weren't kicking on. Yeah, the fans kick on. That switch kicks the fans on at 160. It's not supposed to kick them on until 185. And the thermostat opens, it opened right at 170. But that'll be fine when you start driving it and getting some RPM in it. We may even just put a 160 thermostat in it, because you actually get a little bit of horsepower running them a little cold. They don't idle as good unless they're warmed all the way up, but they do seem to have a little bit more power. It's not much, maybe 2 or 3, but you do get a little bit of power if you run them just a little bit colder. So maybe I'll just put a 160 thermostat in it. That opens at 170, the fans kick on at 160. The funny thing is, where it flows through the thermostat, even though the thermostat ain't open, it still flows through there. It keeps the car at 160. But once you do your burnout and stuff like that, it'll get up high enough to open the thermostat open. But yeah, that's going to do it for that video. So after the thermostat opened, I did use the bottle and burped it again, but this is good. I mean, all I got to do now is wire loom all these wires back through here and up through here and stuff like that, and that'll do it. Y'all like and subscribe and have a great day. The next video, I probably won't do it till tomorrow because it's cold outside. It's supposed to be about 10 degrees warmer tomorrow. It's about 32 right now. That ain't too cold for me. But tomorrow I'll drive it and we'll put it up on the trans brake. I might even change the wheels on it and put street tires on it. I was going to go tomorrow and help Austin change his head gasket. His bloated head gasket already, and they were brand new LS9 head gaskets with ARP bolts. Not sure why it bloated head gasket, and his is an aluminum block. So usually when you're getting on one and you blow a head gasket, it'll melt the aluminum head a little bit. I don't know if y'all saw my video on my LT1 when the crank sensor failed and I blew a head gasket on a 200 shot. It melted the head. His is aluminum block, so if that happens on his, it could melt the head and the block, which would suck, but we'll have to get in there and see. But yeah, next video is going to be me driving it.